everyone. Welcome back to the Earthdawn Survival Guide, the podcast for all disciplines, paths, players, and game masters, with your questers Josh and Dan. That guy is Josh.
And that guy is Dan.
And on today's podcast, we will be discussing all things geographical, because we're going to crack open the Skypoint and Vivane boxed set and do a cursory glance, introductory overview, or deep dive. Take your pick. What we're going to talk about as far as Skypoint and Vivane are concerned. And I'm going to lay out all of my misconceptions on this, because I have never opened this box set before. So if you have any questions for us, please drop us a line at edsgpodcast@gmail.com, and we will get to those questions in probably one of our mailbag episodes. So let's begin with both of our familiarity with the Vivane and Skypoint box set, or lack thereof.
Yeah, well, you were saying that this was your first time looking at the box set, and I suspect that's probably because you hadn't had a game that involved it at any point.
Correct.
And you probably then didn't want to read it in case you were playing in a game and you didn't want things spoiled or secrets revealed or anything like that.
Yeah, I mentioned that before.
Whereas I read this through back in 95 or 96, whenever it was that I actually got my copy. Probably not long after it actually came out.
Yeah.
Because by that time, the local game store knew that I would get anything Earthdawn that came out. And so they probably had it ordered, and when it became available, they ordered it and let me know, and I picked it up very soon thereafter. Once I started buying Earthdawn products there, which would have been starting in 94, 95, something like that. Not long after I moved to Maine, my local game shop. But I picked it up and read it, and I have occasionally gone back to check a detail or two or something that comes to mind, but I haven't read this product in any significant depth in probably more than 20 years.
Fair.
And so we are both coming at it, you from a brand new perspective.
Yes.
With all the preconceptions that you might have had in mind, and me from a perspective of, I kind of know what's going on here. I think the last time that I looked at anything in this actually was when I was working on the setting and history chapters for the 4th edition GM's Guide, because I would have grabbed this and referred to it, or at least looked things up to find things that I could note as maybe having been changed, especially with what happened to Vivane, which we talked about
eons ago.
Ages and ages ago.
250 episodes
when we
ago.
went over the updates to the timeline and the history chapter and whatnot. There were 3 boxed sets released for Earthdawn.
Yeah.
There was the Barsaive boxed set.
Yep.
There was Parlength boxed set. And this one, Skypoint and Vivane, was the last of the 3 boxed sets.
In 6 years of publication, that ain't bad. That's one every 2 years, essentially.
Well, it was something that was a lot more common back in the mid-90s.
Yeah.
In addition to these boxed sets, FASA did a Denver boxed set for Shadowrun.
Which, since I live near Denver, I had to pick up.
Yeah. Which had the interesting, this is a total tangent, but had the interesting bit of Denver was a city that was divided up into these little different corporate enclaves. And the tchotchkes that were included in the Denver box included 2 quote unquote security passes for certain districts. And they were randomized, or maybe they were semi-randomized. There were like 8 of them or something like that in total.
Yeah.
But only 2 came in the box. And so it was not intended as like, oh, you're going to have to buy multiple box sets in order to
get them all,
because that's kind of dumb. But the idea that, oh, these are the ones that you get. Probably can't see it with my camera, but mine is up on the top of the shelves behind me.
Yeah. I can't see the top shelf, but I understand. Mine was stolen by a former roommate, so I no longer have it.
Yeah, they also did a boxed set for Crimson Skies, the sort of fighter combat game that they did in the latter half of the 90s, which had this really kind of interesting balkanized United States 1930s era fighter combat games. Like really interesting kind of setting idea.
It's great stuff. Love that game.
So FASA was no stranger to box sets. Of course, you had, if you go back a little bit further with them, Battletech, obviously, many box sets with that. Renegade Legion, box sets galore on that, because those were both sort of minis type games. But Skypoint and Vivane was the third boxed set for Earthdawn, and actually came with a bunch of stuff in it.
Oh, yeah.
People who may recall or may be more familiar with the Parlength box set, it had the one book, it had the big fold-out color map wall image, which is not really a map, but is actually a really cool kind of handout because it is an actual in-game artifact.
Yes.
And then like a whole bunch of handouts that were ostensibly documents that you could purchase from Vartigal's Lore Exchange.
I Xeroxed that sucker off and had all of my players sign it as their character.
Oh, yeah.
That was fun to hand out.
Part of the point. The Barsaive box set had the two booklets, had the big sort of like setting only Explorer's Guide to Barsaive, and then a smaller GM's book that had some additional semi-random setting information in it, along with the big, gorgeous color map, Shantaya's Sextant.
Yeah, and a Sextant.
I think that was it. It had cards.
Oh, it had cards.
It had the little treasure and creature cards.
Yep.
And actually, the Parlength box set had some of those as well.
You are correct.
Now that I mentioned those. Skypoint did not have any of those. I think the original idea for having the treasure cards in the Barsaive box set was, oh, you have found this thread item. Here is a card to represent that item. And on the card, you can kind of keep track of the key knowledge and things like that. Kind of interesting idea, but not, I think, ultimately practical in the long run.
Yeah, there's too much to know to fit on a little tiny 2.5 by 3.
Yeah, there was that. And, I perhaps Lou can provide some additional insights into that, but there wasn't anything like that in the Vivane box.
Yeah.
But the Vivane box ended up with 3 booklets.
Yeah.
2 that described the city of Vivane itself. Barsaivian Vivane and Theran Vivane, which were the 2 sort of parts of the city, which we'll get into in a lot more depth in a future episode.
Yes.
And then book 3 was Vivane Province, which described sort of the lands around Vivane, including discussion of Skypoint and a little bit of information on Cara Fahd and Landis and Rugaria, which is the province even further to the southwest of Barsaive.
Yep.
Various locations and had a little bit about running adventures in Vivane and whatnot. But I think similar to the Parlength box, perhaps the idea behind it was this is a location. This box set is sort of dedicated to be a campaign location, like a campaign setting.
Yeah.
And one that is a lot more focused on the political struggle between Barsaive and the Theran Empire. Because this is where the Therans are. And everything that kind of goes along with that.
And that's why I never really got in depth with this to the last thing you just said, is because I was running Earthdawn for my group, and I figured I'd get somebody's attention that they would want to dip their toe into the game master side of the screen. Great. But they said, well, we've gone all over Barsaive. Where can I go that, if I'm new to this whole thing? I was going to hand them this entire box set and say, here's your corner of Barsaive, or off the corner of Barsaive. This is your area. Go run this. I've not read it. I won't interfere with anything you want to change or modify or duplicate or blah, 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 blah. Go! Which is why I never did it. Unfortunately, I never had any takers. So I never had any takers to actually pick up this boxed set. Other people got behind the screen eventually, and they did other things. But nobody
they did other things, but in Barsaive. And yeah, Barsaive was such a... Certainly by the time that this box set...
Yeah.
I'm going to... If I refer to it as a book, I mean, like, as a product generally.
Yes. 3 booklets make a book. We're good.
Yeah. By the time this came out... Now, we were talking about this before we hit record, that Earthdawn released a lot of stuff in a relatively short period of time.
Yeah.
First edition, the core rulebook was released in 1993.
Yeah.
We were looking at release dates. This box set came out in 1995, and this is, oh, gad.
Like the 4th or
6108 is the product, which means it was but this is like the 8th or 9th, depending on how you count or whatever, setting book, right? The Theran Empire source book, which came out 2 years later, and I have some discussion about that we'll have in a future episode, was 6114.
Yeah.
So in the space between this book coming out in copyright 1995,
Yeah.
the Theran Empire book, copyright 1997, that's 6 products,
Yeah, between them.
right? 6 or 7, roughly.
Yeah.
I mean, sort of, yeah, between them, like 5 or 6. That included the Bloodwood source book, which came out right before Theran Empire.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not even counting adventure supplements and Arcane Mysteries and Magic of Manual Secrets. I don't remember, because their product numbers were not in the 6100. They were like 6200 or 6300 for adventures.
Yep.
Yeah, 6401, Prelude to War, came out after this, certainly. I think it might have come out before Theran Empire, but I'm not 100% sure. I would have to check actual, like I'd have to go digging. It was like around, I'd have to reread like the introduction to the Theran Empire book, because I know the premise of that is that the Great Library sent a delegation to Thera to take part in a big discussion about the various provinces.
Yeah.
And there was potentially some reference or discussion in that about recent events and whether that tied into Prelude to War or not.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of stuff that was coming out. And even though this came out only 2 years after the core book,
Yeah.
so much, I mean, you had Adept's Way, you had the Barsaive box set, which was the 6100 product now that I'm thinking about it. Adept's Way, the 2 Denizens books,
Yeah.
Legends 1 at least had come out at that point.
True.
Thrall, was Serpent River, certainly. Actually, Serpent River came out after this.
Wow.
Now that I'm looking at the product, the Serpent River is 6109. In fact, Thrall was 6111. Thrall technically came out after this in terms of like product release numbers.
Yeah.
So even that, this is actually still relatively early now that I think about what we consider sort of like the core setting source books for Barsaive.
Yeah.
Actually came out before Serpent River and Thrall, which are like considered like the 2 big,
massive. Yeah.
these are detailing settings.
Yeah.
I mean, you had Parlength, the Forgotten City beforehand. You had Adept's Way, you had Horrors, you had the Legends 1.
Yep.
Legends 2 came later. Creatures of Barsaive. That was sort of more generic, but because of the information that was present in the Barsaive box set, along with Denizens 1 and 2, which gave you a lot of cultural information about the various name giver races.
Yeah.
You had Adept's Way. I think that there was possibly a thought that this could be another sort of base for a campaign similar to how Parlength was conceived, I suspect.
Agreed.
But that because of what happened, particularly with the follow-up that same year of Serpent River, Thrall very soon thereafter, there was a lot of information about Barsaive that ended up with Barsaive being the focus of a lot of campaigns. And this ended up not getting perhaps quite the attention or having captured the imagination of people because it was tucked away all the way down there in southwestern. Not only, like, it's not even technically Barsaive. Like, you have to go past the Twilight Peaks, you have to go past the ruins of Cara Fahd and Landis to get down there.
Yes.
With the long-term plans that had sort of been going on, that we can start to see some of the hints about in Thrall in particular, like is kind of one of the early ones.
Yeah.
But things like that just going on, that's kind of the situation there, it feels like.
Totally.
Yeah, because it was all the way down there, I don't think a lot of people, it certainly didn't capture the imagination, I feel, the way that Barsaive in general did, particularly with Thrall and the Serpent River source book, both of which did so much to describe such a large portion of Barsaive, particularly Serpent River.
Yes. Well, I think that since... Go ahead.
Sorry, no, I was going to say, but I was kind of segue to you.
Yeah, since the Barsaive map was in the core book, and then you had Thrall, the source book, and then the Serpent River source book, flesh those out, land and water areas, and the races within them, and the societies that are there, and the Neals that are there. Yeah, this is a whole nother section of the map. It's just that bottom little corner of Barsaive, and then you expand upon that. So yes, this is like a whole new juncture that I agree with you. Really, somebody take this and run with it. And I don't think it got run with enough.
Yeah. And there's a pretty significant difference, I think, that we will discover perhaps as we go through this. And I'm going to have to reread stuff. I'm going to have to prep more than I did tonight.
What? 250 episodes. It's about time.
No, I have prepped in the past, but I am realizing that my normally easy to kind of recall to mind information about stuff is just not there for this book because I did not deal with it in any significant capacity at any point. I think I ran one, maybe two of the adventures out of the Sky Point Vivane Adventures book.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it was not an area that my group, any of the groups that I ran, ended up interacting with in any significant capacity. Barsaive, generally speaking, is to borrow the term, a points of light setting, is that you've got major population centers like Thrall, Travar, Yoruba, Iopos. You've got these sort of cities, but a lot of wilderness between them with smaller communities and villages and whatnot, but it is a very kind of stark, I don't want to say barren, but feels very
open.
Yeah, open, where the politics, particularly like the relationship with the Theran Empire and stuff is distant. And that is not the case in Vivane province because the Therans are there.
Yeah.
And it is a lot more, for lack of a better term, and trying not to mean this pejoratively, a lot more civilized. There are more communities. There is more stuff going on. Yeah. And I think part of that is that it actually is, geographically speaking, a smaller area.
Yeah.
So when you have, relatively speaking, the same kind of amount of information in the Skypoint box that you do with the Barsaive box set box, it's going to feel busier and whatnot. Yeah. But the fact that it is effectively the seat of Theran power in this region has all of that Theran stuff going along with it that is just not present in other parts of Barsaive because they're all no longer Theran or are ruined or whatever.
Yeah. The basically the information, to condense what you said, and this is the word I'm going to use, condense it. The information in the Skypoint and Vivane box set is condensed into 1/4 of the size of the map that Barsaive is. So all the stuff we're going to throw at you takes place in 1/4 the same area as Barsaive. Yeah. And so it's just as much information spread out over 1/4 the size.
Yeah, and there's a lot more information on the city of Vivane itself. Like 2/3 of the information in the box set, not quite 2/3, is about the city itself.
Yeah, that's where they're expecting you to.
So that's really what the focus is on the city, because the city is the hub around which the political struggles and political relationship between the Theran Empire and Barsaive exists.
Fair enough. So let me dive into my favorite parts of this boxed set, or let me also clear up some misconceptions that I had going into this, because I got a lot of things wrong.
That's what I was trying to segue into earlier.
Fair.
Why don't you talk about some of the misconceptions that you had?
And they're pretty remedial, so I'm gonna feel free to pause, laugh, and then replay begin the episode again. I love the artwork for all the things that have come out for FASA. I really have. I've always liked the artists that they've snagged. The cover of this boxed set is my absolute favorite piece of art in all of Earthdawn, and I put that piece on my homemade Game Master screen to just instill the awe that should be with people playing in Earthdawn. And I know that piece was up on eBay like last year for sale, and I so did not have the money for it, but I wanted it.
Yeah,
so
that
bad.
was. I saw that. I think you shared that with me.
No. You shared it with me. And I'm kind of like, Josh.
Did I? Okay, I don't remember where it came up. It might have been somebody brought it up on the Discord. But yeah, the original framed artwork for the Skypoint and Vivane box set
If I would have had a limb to sell, I would have sold it for that, but I didn't have one.
Yeah, that was one that I was like, oh, I would desperately love to add that to my, like, to have that in addition to the original of the 4th edition covers.
Yes.
So along with some other, I don't actually, I mentioned this. I have the original artwork for Purifier.
Oh.
The actual black and white
sword
line drawing.
Yeah.
I've got the original.
Nice.
I have that now, and 1 or 2 other like small pieces.
Yeah. I would have loved to have the original Questers cover. That would have been
the one for 4th edition, the Questers book?
Yeah.
That was another one when I had a good chunk of disposable income. Yeah. I reached out to Jeremy, who did that, and asked if it was available because I had seen the original. He had brought it to Gen Con.
Yeah.
One year.
Nice.
Actually was like, oh, like I was like, hey, and I'm like, I love that piece. And he was like, oh, and he actually like took it down and like took it out of the slip cover and like handed it to me for me to look at it up close.
It's got your fingerprints on it.
On the edges, just on the edges. But I reached out to him after had some disposable income. I was like, was this still available? Because I knew he had been selling some of his artwork as these artists tend to do. And it had already gone, unfortunately. Dang. But I did get a couple of the originals of pieces that he did for the interiors of the books. Yeah. Anyway.
No, fair. So this is my favorite piece of art. And so looking at the art, I had always assumed, because it says Skypoint and Vivane, I had always assumed, stupidly, mock me now, all you want, I will take it, I deserve it, that I thought Skypoint was the upper part of the structure and Vivane was the lower part of the structure. This is how remedial I was in my understanding. Boy, am I wrong. I understand that now. So to clarify for everybody, including myself, Skypoint is actually the upper part of the structure. But below that is the town of Vrontok, which we will talk about later in another episode. And so the understanding is that Skypoint and Vivane are 2 separate cities across a river. Vivane is right up against the river. Skypoint is a little bit further to the southwest of that. And so Vivane is a city in the province of Vivane. It's kind of like, Denver being the capital of the state of Denver, or Dallas being the capital state of Dallas. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Hence my confusion.
Yeah, nope, that's perfectly understandable. And Skypoint, I don't even know that I would necessarily go far as to say that it's a city. It's more of a military base.
Right. It's a fortress.
And so it's similar, like if you're talking about Texas, you've got like, one of the U.S. Army bases, one of the U.S. military bases in Texas, which is outside of another community, but is like a town unto itself because of all of the staff and everybody else that lives on there and whatnot. So that's kind of what like Skypoint is. It is the military base from which the Theran Legion and Theran naval detachment that are assigned to quote unquote Barsaive. That's where they are based out of.
Yeah.
And this is part of the reason why I wish I had gone back and reviewed some information a little bit more before, because I seem to recall, and I could be mistaken about this, and I don't know if you came across this in your notes at all.
We'll find out.
Is that Vivane was, I'm pretty sure, one of the first locations that the Theran Empire met with folks from Barsaive ages and ages ago, back before they declared empire, before the big battle where they sailed the behemoth in and nuked all of the troll moots.
Oh, yeah. I didn't uncover that for this evening, however, but I'm going to go with that for right now because, again, your steel trap mind is 9 times out of 10 better than my research. So,
yeah. I mean, it wasn't Vivane at the time, but like that was where the first envoys from the Theran Empire sort of met people from this, from Barsaive.
Yeah.
And I seem to recall it being called Vivane Province is somewhat of a misnomer because it's called that because they don't technically have control of Barsaive, but they kind of, like, Vivane is sort of, its geographical status is kind of unclear.
Fair.
And I get the sense that they called it Vivane Province after the Therans were sort of kicked out during the Theran War, the first Theran War.
Mm-hmm.
not long after the Scourge. But I could be mistaken about that. One other thing that I do want to mention, complete tangent here, this box set was written by Carl Sargent and Mark Gasquion.
Yeah.
Known as well. First off, they were the pair that wrote the novel set in Vivane.
Yeah. Is that Shroud of Madness?
Shroud of Madness, yes, thank you. I was trying to remember what the name of it was.
I read that one.
Yep, they also wrote the Shadowrun novel Nosferatu.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm pretty sure, it's in the other room, so I can't double check, but I'm pretty sure that they wrote the London source book for Shadowrun.
A bell, yes.
Because at least one of them was from the UK.
Yeah, Mark Gasquion.
I am like 97% sure of that.
Yeah.
If not both of them.
Did they also write the Tier 10 gear?
Possibly.
Okay.
Anyway.
It's been 30 years, my memory is faulty.
So they had done, they had done other work with FASA, and I wonder, and again, this may be something that Lou could shed some light on.
Yeah.
If he wants to provide some commentary on this, that because they wrote both the novel and this box set, that the two were sort of developed in tandem.
Sounds right.
The novel grew out of work that they did on the box set, or vice versa.
Yeah.
In a similar way that Kubasic did a lot of work kind of fleshing out the setting of Barsaive through particularly The Longing Ring.
Yeah.
But some of the other, like the other early Earthdawn novels that he wrote.
Yeah. Developing
kind of the setting, going along with that, and the novels kind of helping form some of the backbone of that setting development and world building.
Totally.
I forgot where we were going. So what's next in your notes?
So to give everybody else how the rest of these episodes are going to go, Josh and I are going to play like taxi driver, and I don't mean Robert De Niro. I mean, we're going to pull you along. We're taking you on this journey, leaving the map of Barsaive, heading southwest into the land of Vivane province, as it's colloquially known. And as we get closer to the city of Vivane and or Skypoint, the fortress, we will describe as many things as we can along the way. So we're going to skip around the box set. The box set starts with book 1 in the city, book 2 in the city, book 3 everywhere else. So we're going to go this reverse or jump all over the place to what makes sense to us, especially me, because this is completely new to me. You've been here before with 2 adventures. I have not. So I'm going to drive this bus and Josh is going to play tour guide. Pretty much.
That's the plan anyway.
That's the plan. So that's what we're going to do. And Vivane province, if you want to break it down, I have part of the map in front of me so I can take a look at this. The towns and cities in the northwestern lands. So this is way up to the northwest. We'll eventually get to talk about in Shaldrin, the Springs of Senderness, Morkant, the Citadel of Adjakul, the Dark Keeps, the Hammer Hills, the Stormhammer Jungle, and the Great Crag of the Carolspur Range. Those are some Scrabble letter words. I'm not going to lie about that. The northeastern lands. This is where we're going to be coming from, because in the upper right-hand corner is the Twilight Peaks of the Vivane map. And so unless you're going to like climb mountains, you're going to either want to go westward around the mountains and come south, or you're going to want to go south through the Twilight Peaks along that river near the Death Sea. And eventually, once you get past Cara Fahd and Landis, head west. And so up there is the city of Belaze, the Maze of the Golden Giants, Stormhead, which we will talk about in further detail later, the Citadel of Jerux, Lancarden, and Parland. And then the southern lands, way down there, we'll get to Laura Fern and the Strip Trees. And I don't even know what kind of joke to make about Strip Trees, but that's just me. But today we're going to talk about Cara Fahd as it was presented here before the Cara Fahd book came out. So completely out of order, but one of those things. So we're going to give you the Skypoint and Vivane perspective on Cara Fahd, and we get to finally talk about Landis as it was known in this box set midway through the production line of first edition. So left undefined in book 3 that I can find, because book 3 deals with the frontier lands and the rest of things outside of this map. As far as I can tell, and Josh, please correct me because I know I'm going to be wrong on a bunch of this stuff, this looks like it's a lot that can be developed for myriad communities and tribes and clans and settlements and hints and rumors and hazards. And so I think a lot of this the remaining stuff, because you said, 2 of the books deal with just the city of Vivane. The rest of this map is kind of left open for the game master to use as kind of a big sandbox.
Yeah, and it's similar in that regard to the Barsaive campaign set and Barsaive map.
Yeah.
And the Thrall sourcebook, which came later but has a very similar focus of like the bulk of the Thrall, the Dwarf Kingdom sourcebook is focused on the halls of Thrall, but even more like the personalities.
Oh, yeah.
The people and powers and the Eye of Thrall and the Arm of Thrall and
politics,
the culture and whatnot. And then has like a chapter of like, oh, then there's the inner cities, but then there's also this other chapter that's like all of the territory above ground, which it does like has like, this is kind of just all that's there. And so there is a strong focus on like a central thing, and then some major landmarks and some locations in the surrounding area, but still with a lot more open ground and less strongly defined detail to, one, allow game masters to hang their own hooks on things, but two, I think in the tradition that goes along very, very well with Earthdawn and that we have seen multiple times in other books and stuff that we've talked about, a lot of throwing out ideas and having things out there that if future development happens in regards to this, there are things that we can hook those future ideas onto.
Always. So as part of this little sandbox, skimming book 3, around each city in Vivane province on the map, you'll find little dots here with a name to it. Lie several villages and hamlets, all within a day's walk of those cities. Roughly 100 to 1,000 people live in these air quotes suburbs, because I don't know what else to call them right now. And many more are unmapped and unrecorded settlements exist in Vivane. So this is like I said, the whole sandbox thing. You want to put something here. If somebody handed you this box set and said, here's your corner of Earthdawn, go have fun. A lot of these undeveloped lands, a lot of these spaces between cities, you could put a little settlement here, make up 100 NPCs or 1,000 NPCs. Good luck with that. And run your little adventures between them. Go from there. So Vivane province, perspective on Cara Fahd. So we're going to get in the cab. We start the meter. We're going to go through Cara Fahd here. This is how Cara Fahd was presented before the Cara Fahd book came out, especially before the call of Crathis Gron to reform Cara Fahd. So they called it a mighty land whose orc tribes lived in a semi-permanent state of war with the humans in Landis, just to the south. The land itself was harsh and fierce and ill-suited for agriculture, very resource poor, and the orcs slew many, many Therans who brought the rights of protection and passage, so very few cares were built in Cara Fahd. And since the Scourge, there's been no unification, again, before the call of Crathis Gron, and roughly 75,000 name-givers now currently live there. 45,000 orcs, as I said, 60% was orc, and the rest is divided evenly, which I don't think is exactly what they intended to say, because I can't imagine 5,000 obsidian there, 5,000 to Scrang, 5,000 humans, 5,000 trolls, 5,000 windlings, and 5,000 dwarves. So higher percentages of the other ones, I'd say a handful of Tiskrang and a handful of obsidian, just cuz. Anyway, the orcs tribes now survive as bandits, robbers, and scorchers. Again, this is the Vivane perspective on Cara Fahd before we got to the source book. And the scorchers often sell prisoners as slaves to Therans. Did they, though? That's where I'm going to stop now for Josh's input on this one.
It's possible. There certainly wasn't anything discussed about that in the Cara Fahd source book in terms of the history and whatnot. It certainly is possible that there would be particular war bands of orcs that would not have a problem, for example, making a profit by selling non-orcs into
Fair
bondage in Thera.
Fair.
It's certainly something that feels revisionist, maybe a little bit later.
Yeah.
With the strong leanings towards low cost and the uprising and Hrakgron and the founding of Cara Fahd and sort of the legends around which Cara Fahd was originally born and the stories that continued on. But again, no such thing as a monolith.
Yeah.
I mean, we just went through the Cara Fahd book and the wide variety. There are some tribes of orcs that are assholes. And so I have little doubt that there would be tribes that would not have any issue.
Yeah.
Freedom is a privilege reserved for orcs. Other name givers we really don't care so much about and are willing to perhaps sell them into bondage in order to make some money for ourselves. But it's certainly not something that I think would be tolerated in reborn Cara Fahd.
Yeah.
Once there is the presence of Krathis Gron and her attempts to, for lack of a better term, civilize the Orc Nation, because they are a people that have this sort of cultural legend. And remember, as we found out in the Cara Fahd book, a lot of the residents of Cara Fahd are orcs having come in from elsewhere.
Yes.
There is a very large influx of Barsaivian orcs into Cara Fahd, which can certainly dilute the sense of selling folks into slavery for whatever reason.
Fair. I just didn't know if this was like a Vivane throwing shade at Cara Fahd. Oh yeah, they're the ones who sold other people into slavery. It wasn't really us, but we decided to take advantage of that and bought the slaves.
I mean, if you're talking about it from a Theran perspective, I don't think the Therans would throw shade in that regard because they're the ones who practice
a lot of it.
Chattel slavery.
Yes. Yes.
They don't have a problem with it, so there is no reason for them to throw shade about it.
Okay.
It's like, yeah, we get slaves from them. We get slaves from everybody. Sometimes we capture them ourselves. Sometimes other people will capture them and sell them to us. That's fine. Whatever.
Fair.
So, I don't think it's necessarily a throwing shade at Cara Fahd because, again, from the perspective of this book, and this is a book that is not particularly written from an in-character perspective.
I was going to bring that up.
This is much more like the Serpent River in that it is presenting a lot of information and in places where some plausible deniability or haze, like it will be presented as legends say, blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
So unlike some of the other books, when you get into these actual setting locations, likewise, the Thrall Source book is not presented as a full in-character document the way that Adept's Way or the Denizens books or the Explorer's Guide to Barsaive from the Barsaive box set are.
Yeah.
There is still a lot of haze and unreliable narrator kind of thing, but it's not, oh, this is a whole book that is put together from the perspective of these various people.
Yeah.
So, one, there's less of an in-character perspective where somebody would potentially be throwing shade.
Fair.
Two, at the time this is going on, there is not even really a rumor of Cara Fahd being reborn as an independent nation.
Yeah.
That region was Cara Fahd. It was the Orc Kingdom, but that was centuries ago before the Scourge. Now it's populated by the
bandits and scorchers and
roaming war bands that are the survivors from that kingdom, but they're mostly fighting with each other and scrabbling to survive. Maybe individual war bands might be a threat to trade or something like that, but we don't see them as a threat to our presence here in Vivane.
Yeah.
They're bandits, they're scorchers, they're raiders. If they cause problems, we'll deal with them, but for the most part, we just let them keep up their internal squabbles and their squabbles with the survivors of Landis on the other side of whatever.
Not
Fine.
worth mentioning unless you bring it up. Yeah.
There's no reason to throw shade given the context of the material in this book at this time.
Absolutely fair. So the last few points on this one is the Vivane perspective on Cara Fahd is that the orcs of Cara Fahd at this time, before the other Cara Fahd source book comes out, is that the orcs of Cara Fahd especially hate Therans. Again, they slew most of them who showed up with the rights of protection and passage because they're like, go away. But Thera used to launch airship raids, which Cara Fahd was powerless to prevent. That's why the orcs of Cara Fahd really hated the Therans and their air superiority. And ancient Cara Fahd treasures and ruins still lie hidden there and abandoned, which is not disputed by the Cara Fahd sourcebook.
Yeah. One other thing that actually I find interesting, the very tail end of the Cara Fahd section here, it does talk about the rumors of two prominent tribes, the Fists of Fahd and the Righteous Vipers, arranging a marriage that will bind them into a single new tribe.
That's Blades.
Which is, of course, a feature we've talked about it in the Cara Fahd source book when we were talking about those tribes. It is a feature of the first adventure in the Blades collection, which was also released in 1995.
Yes.
That was a thing that was dropped referring to those events, whether pre or post. But clearly, that was something that was already in development in writing at the time, at the same time that this book was being written. So I just like that little bit of, that here is something else that's going on that ties into
these two
other products.
Yeah, we have these three things that making this Venn diagram about this one wedding. The Skypoint Vivane source book, the Cara Fahd book, and Blades all mention this one wedding. So one of those things. Anyway, so if you're kind of since we're taking this little taxi cab and you guys are along for the ride, you listeners, we are going to get to the boxed setical portion of this podcast and quickly just deal with the other two things we talked about. So since we've mentioned Cara Fahd and the Vivane perspective on it, if you come around the north side of the Twilight Peaks, north side of the Dolaris Mountains, because that's the north side of the Vivane map, and you finally get to this open space, and before you hit the next set of mountains, there's this little tiny town in there called Hildingrist Crest. A lot of wrist crests in there. This is due west of the northernmost point of Cara Fahd, by the way, just so you can keep track of where it is. The Therans dug a mass grave here for 1,000 orcs after a battle that took place there. The interesting thing about this, and this is all Earthdawn, is that the dead orc corpses keep rising through the ground. They're not walking dead or cadaver men. The corpses just rise. And they leak these foul vapors and fluids, for lack of a better term. And this creates an acrid smoke surrounding the area. So decomposition for this buried populace is extremely slow, by the way. So this is an area of note. If you're going to travel into Vivane, this may not be the way you want to go.
Yeah, so it's not clear what's going on here. This is this weird thing is happening. And it's not that the bodies are coming up and they're animated like cadaver men or whatever that then continue to attack. They don't stay buried.
Yeah.
There is something going on that just kind of keeps pushing them back up to the surface. I'm reminded, the image that immediately pops to my head, if you've ever seen the first Poltergeist, the end of that movie where they discover that they built the house on the burial ground, but they moved the gravestones, but they didn't move the bodies.
Yes.
That kind of situation where it's not like these aren't zombies coming back causing problems for people. It's just something's weird about the land. The bodies keep coming back up to the surface. Mm-hmm. They tried burning the bodies and something weird happened. They tried burying them deeper and they still keep coming up. Yep. There's other weird stuff that's going on. But it's obviously some kind of, quote unquote, my favorite term, magical weirdness going on that they're not sure what it is. Since they don't know exactly what's going on, they don't really have a solution. The next thought is, well, maybe if we dig up all these bodies, we take all these bodies and we take them far away from here, maybe that will prevent the problem. But nobody really wants to take responsibility for doing that. So for the most part now, it's just kind of like, well,
we'll just leave that alone.
We're going to avoid the site. We're not going to do anything with it.
Exactly. Because how would you move 1,000+ corpses without a gigantic wagon train that already is leaking these acid and fluids and cloud, blah.
And then, of course, there's the fantastic bit at the end. If the Game Master wishes, they may devise some awful new development regarding the slain orcs that somehow involves any adventurers who happen to be in the area. Hey, here's a weird thing going on. Throw your characters into it. See what happens.
Absolutely. And so that's just one of those interesting things. Clearly, something is happening well beneath the surface of the earth down there to push all these bodies back up to the top again. It's kind of like sifting flour, and you get those little chunks of flour at the very, very top. That's how the bodies keep rising to the top of this. All the dirt keeps settling down, and they keep pushing the bodies to the top. So you may not want to go that way. If you instead turn this taxi around and go south of the Twilight Peaks, just to the east of Cara Fahd. We're going to kind of skirt along the side of the Death Sea, and we're going to go through, not south of, but through Landis. So finally, we get to have a little discussion about Landis. It's a few pages long, and it's another little jungle-looking area. It's still northeast of Vivane, and even further northeast of Sky Point. Again, those are across a river. So this is just north of the Longbone River. I didn't name this. It's on the map. Chuckle all you want. One of the few areas of Barsaive that the Therans regard as no longer under their control, which is amazing for anybody in Thera to actually admit that Landis is no longer under their control, because they still occasionally think that Barsaive sometimes is still under their control to a certain degree. People in Landis travel to and trade with Barsaive on the regular. They do this a little town called Lancarden, just south of the jungle areas of Landis, or the forest areas of Landis. Though they do not consider Thrall the seat of Landisian government. They are their own people, and that's how they like it. Most people in the northeast Vivane province long ago withdrew to Landis, retreating into the forest so as not to be as exposed to raids from the Therans or the Karen orcs. So they use the jungle of Landis, or the forest of Landis, as cover. So they're mostly a woodsy type, jungly type dwellers. Most settlements in Landis, yeah, go ahead.
The jungles and forests of Landis are actually part of the same forest jungle terrain that is southern, that where the citadel that what's her name is obsessed with.
Zaras, Ice Thought.
Yeah, Zaras, Ice Thought. It's all the same. There's a river that sort of acts as the border effectively between Cara Fahd and Landis, but that's running right through this forested jungle area, and so it's all kind of the same terrain. It's just that Landis is almost entirely covered by forest and jungle type terrain, whereas that's only a small portion of Cara Fahd, because as you get closer to the mountains, it gets a lot more sort of rolling hills and rocky plains.
Exactly. That's the Greenheart River, which is bisecting the two of them. Just to help out with the geography, since this is a geography lesson podcast. So yeah, most settlements in Landis are along the shore of that Greenheart River. Thank you for the intro, Josh. And across that river on the southern slope of the Twilight Peaks. So really, it's mostly along the Greenheart River is where you're going to find settlements of, hundreds of people making a village here and there. Individual families or maybe small clans will live deeper in, but most of the settlements will be along the shore of that river. Landis, by the way, suffered brutally from the scourge. And the total population, as of this writing in this box set, is around 400,000 for all that area.
Which is actually not significantly small when you compare that, like, Cara Fahd only had 75,000.
Exactly. So it's 3 times as much.
Yeah. But
4 times.
Landis, because of their wars with Cara Fahd, blew a lot of their resources as well, and also didn't end up building a lot of cares. And there's nothing in this book to indicate the 3 citadels that do get mentioned in the Cara Fahd book.
Mm-hmm.
There are 3 citadels in Landis that ended up getting built. It does mention that some people did end up building cares because they understood what was going on, but it was not something that was done at sort of a national level.
Yeah.
But for the most part, the people in Landis just kind of want to live and be left alone.
Yes. And they have a similar racial makeup as the rest of Barsaive, whereas Cara Fahd is uniquely, predominantly orc.
Yeah, much more predominantly orc. There is, not surprisingly, some distrust of orcs within Landis. Orcs from outside Landis, obviously, because of the troubles with Cara Fahd, both in the past and the present, and the difficulties with the Therans. There's a description of an event where some folks from Landis, who likewise are not fond of the Therans, raided into a Theran settlement across the border into Vivane, and discovered that there really weren't many actual Therans there. There were mostly slaves and laborers.
Yeah.
And Thera retaliated by sending Aquila and basically killing or enslaving an entire village of several hundred people.
Yes.
And then the whole point is just okay, yeah, we won't Thera demonstrating that don't mess with us and we'll leave you alone, or don't retaliate for the abuses that we are heaping on you, or we are going to heap even bigger abuses on you.
Yes. So yeah, if you trade with Thera, you're fine because they're the bully and they can get what they want out of it. If you don't trade with Thera, they'll just take it. So either way, you have to deal with them. But yes, most of their site of trade for Landis is at this city town called Lancarden. It's south of Landis on the Longbone River. Again, I did not name this river. It's on the map that way. There's not an R in there. It's not Longborn, it's Longbone. But that river empties out into Death's Sea. So the river doesn't really go anywhere useful. It's just there. But Landis, by the way, has multiple abandoned settlements with priceless historical records and treasures, just like every other part of Barsaive and every other part of Vivane. So it's no different there. You want to do something in Landis, knock yourself out. It's still functional, but it's not. They're independent as far as they don't acknowledge that Barsaive is in charge of them. They also don't acknowledge that Thera is in charge of them or anybody else. It's the independent.
It's like a lot of the other small settlements and communities in Barsaive, which is that they just kind of want to be left alone to do their thing and survive. Yeah. There's no central authority, and there hasn't really been in Landis for centuries, ever since the big battle with Cara Fahd that led to the collapse of both kingdoms, essentially. Yeah. You may have places where some nearby communities kind of support each other, or there may be a, for lack of a better term, baron or count or somebody like that who has amassed enough wealth and influence to kind of have multiple communities under their vassalage.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's just a bunch of people that are descended from this kingdom of long ago because they, as a people, did not collectively prepare themselves for the scourge. There's not really a strong central cultural identity in a similar way that, at least at this time, there isn't one in Cara Fahd. There is one that will be reborn in Cara Fahd with the arrival of Krathusgran and her passions granted incredibly potent troubadour magic.
Yes.
To reignite this spark, in large part by not just inspiring the orcs that were still in Cara Fahd, but bringing orcs from the rest of Barsaive to come and reclaim this legend. And we're like talking about Cara Fahd again.
Because Cara Fahd is awesome.
Landis gets a page here. They get a page or so in the Cara Fahd book because of their proximity there and the history with it. But Landis is an area that hasn't really gotten any kind of large scale or detailed exploration of it.
Yeah.
That's fine. I think similar to, at least talking about old development, it didn't get anything because there wasn't anything that was sort of important to the story that was being told with regards to the prelude to war and the upcoming Second Theran War and things like that. Cara Fahd got detailed because of its significance with the reborn nation and what role that nation was going to play with the Second Theran War and things like that. And Landis is just kind of this, similar to Utrecht. It's a label on a map. There's a little bit of information about it, and you can feel free to do what you wanted to do with it beyond that.
Exactly.
I did have a game that I was running that didn't last particularly long, but one of the things that I was planning on doing with it, having one of the plot lines there being sort of an attempt to reform Landis in a similar way that Cara Fahd was being reformed. But the drawback there is there doesn't seem to be any strong cultural legend, cultural mythology like you have with the orcs and Krak-Gran and the Uprising and things like that. There is some reference to Landis in some places, and the I think there's a couple of a legend or two in the Legends of Barsaive book, that might have some information on things like that. But you've got the War Helm of Landis, like as an item, thread item that's in the game. But there's like a lot of not it's just kind of like a lot of vague sketches and not a whole lot of detail.
That, which is great. Like I said, this is a sandbox for most game masters to use. There's enough there that you can get started, but there's not enough fine detail that's restricting what you'd like to do with that. And like I said, there's a couple of magic items or places of import, but really, the information I just gave you is enough to go on to build up what you want to do. A lot of riverside communities all along Greenheart River and down, and then maybe some small little villages within the forest and knock yourself out. And you've got the point of trade down at the south of that, Landcarden. Go. You want to build up a Landcarden city? Knock yourself out. Again, near a river, but nothing too prohibitive there for you. So how is this for introduction number 1 for the Vivane and Skypoint box set? Cleared up a lot of my misconceptions.
Yeah, we haven't really gotten much into Vivane itself just yet. We wanted to talk about the Cara Fahd bit because we had just recently covered that book.
Yeah. Kind
of talk about the information that's here on Landis, talk about some of the misconceptions, and talking about the box set as a product in general. Totally. So, that gives me something to actually read and remind myself and maybe prep a little bit for next time so I can feel like I'm able to talk a little bit more intelligently about it.
That's okay. I did some lifting on this one. We will talk about, so next episode, we're going to talk about the overall Theran involvement within this province and the other provinces around this. So we'll break down that a little bit as well. But
yeah,
until next time, go pick up the Skypoint Vivane box set. It's available at FASA Games.
If you can find one.
If you can find one on eBay, knock yourself out. Otherwise, the PDFs are available on FASAGames.com for pretty darn cheap, not going to lie. But this one's going to get some love, so go do that for your legend.
Good night, everybody.